The only thing that stays the same is change, they say. So, with a new season on hand, we've switched up the car classes and start the title fight all over again. But one that is often tradition is you've got to start your year of sports car racing at Daytona. And that's just what we'll do as we get ready to watch round one of the Porsche Owners Club Series. You'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Roush Racing driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Christian Duploy, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Daytona's oval is obviously the more famous part of the circuit, so in case you didn't know about the road course, let's head to our track guide. Welcome to the Daytona International Speedway. While many oval fans associate this Central Florida track with mainly NASCAR, the road course has gained just as much worldwide fame thanks to it hosting motorcycles and sports cars for decades. In fact, the flagship road race, the 24 Hours of Daytona, has become a major draw for drivers of all disciplines, many eager to have a go at endurance racing. The stats make this place sound relatively simple, with 12 corners on the regular road circuit and 14 on the NASCAR version, both spread amongst 3.5 miles. Indeed, a majority of the lap is spent on the oval portion, where you fly along the notoriously steep banking. But it's easy to underestimate the challenge presented to the drivers. The infield portion begins with the scary kinked entry of Turn 1. Not only is it the fastest part of the track, but the transition from the banking to the flat tends to upset the car as you slow it down. There's also the bus stop chicane on the backstretch. Added in the 80s, this is a tricky piece of circuit that punishes a poor exit severely, with it leading back into the latter half of the oval. As you'd expect, the long periods on throttle mean that drafting tends to play a factor in the racing. It also means passing isn't usually too great of an issue if you have the pace to catch someone. The more difficult thing is managing to gap your opponent so that they don't ride in your slipstream once you get by. With half a century of endurance racing collected among these walls, it's not unfair to say that road racers have just as much claim to call Daytona home. Fans who come to watch certainly won't be disappointed by the high speeds and fantastic thrills it invariably provides each year. This time of year, Joey, we see a lot of Daytona in sim racing as well as in the real world.
Yeah, you better buckle up because you're going to be in Florida for a couple months here between the road course and the 500. But we are here on that roval. We utilize both the oval and the interior road course, 3.56 miles in length, and 3 big-time passing opportunities. Turn 1, Turn 4, Turn 6 is always good. And then, you know what? Let's throw in a 4th good passing opportunity, the Le Mans chicane, the bus stop chicane. Just depends on what you want to call it today. Daytona, a drafting track. You got to be careful on the brakes, especially through turns 4, 5, and 6, because remember, everything is low downforce here, so you don't have that mechanical grip that you really want through that slow speed section. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a draft track. If you lose touch of the slipstream, you're in trouble here.
Yeah, that's going to be job one for sure. And before we see whether or not those drivers can stay together, we do want to mention our sponsors, which includes Porsche. There is no substitute. Find out more at Porsche.com. And Top Gun MG, helping financial advisors be the best of the best. Contact them today at TopGunMG.com. That is TopGunMG.com. So, as we mentioned, things have changed around here slightly, including the race format, even though it looks like it hasn't updated a little bit here, Joey.
Yeah, we are round 1 of 13, and scratch out that 30 minutes. We're actually going to be doing a 40-minute race here at Daytona. The 2 classes this season are going to be the Porsche GTE and the Porsche GT4. So we've got the RSR car as well as that Cayman GT4 car that's going to be racing on the track. And then, of course, we've got 1 spare car, I believe. So if you do get into some trouble out there, you can come down pit lane and get that fixed up. And you know what? I'm looking. We got 2 fast repairs here at Daytona.
Indeed. They've got those 2 in their pocket in case they get into any trouble, which can be easy to do down into turn 1. And this is not a typical combination of cars that you would see in most racing series. The old GTE class cars as well as the GT4s. And I mean, we've seen the GT4s a lot these days, but the RSR hasn't seen racing in a little bit, Joey. I mean, do you want to refresh our audience a little bit of kind of what sets this car apart?
So I guess the easiest way to kind of explain it would be what was the GTE class. So it's not a GT3 category car. It's actually a little bit beefier and faster than what your GT3 category is like. It's got wider fenders, bigger brakes, bigger tires, but you also have to live with some of those non-nannies in the car, right? You don't have ABS, you don't have the traction control, so you have to be a little bit more well-mannered on the controls. And remember, last season, we had those prototypes, so I do think that the drivers this car suits their style a little bit more, being a true Porsche underneath the bodywork.
That's for sure. And you can see how much of a diffuser it has underneath it. Kind of this class is known for that, just monstrous diffusers on the back of the car to help them stay glued to the track. They will have quite a bit of downforce as Marc Rondeau brings it out of turn 4. He currently sits in 5th in class. He's only about 400ths off of Dylan Scott there on row 2, so not too far away, but it looks like this lap won't count for him. So we'll have to carry on around once again. He's got about a little less than 8 minutes left. That should be plenty of time to get a number of laps in here.
Definitely. Yeah, like you said, about 7.5 minutes remaining. And the nice part about the open qualifying, too, is that even when that timer runs down, right, when we click down to 0, as long as you have already started your flying lap, you will be able to complete that flying lap. Obviously, if you cross the line after the checkers come out, that's going to be the end of the session. But if you've started that lap, you can complete it.
And, of course, the one thing that does mean is that they share the track out there. So the drivers have to be trying to deal with the traffic as they are qualifying. I guess the good news is there's only 5 of the GT4 cars out there, so there's not too many to have to try and dodge, but still, you catch one at just the wrong time, it could mess up one of your best laps and could have an effect. BJ Fulton right now actually the quickest in those GTE cars. Sam Mayorga, your fastest down in the GT4s. So that is the state of play currently, although I look at Sam Mayorga, 0.8 of a second over the next nearest car. That's a massive gap.
That is a big gap. I was just going through timing and scoring myself here. I'm noticing how close it is between Dylan Scott, Marc Rondeau, and also Matt Steele. I think I only see about 1/10 of a second separating 4th, 5th, and 6th, and it's only about 4 thousandths of a second separating Dylan Scott from Jad Duncan up there in 3rd place. So BJ Fulton leading the way, provisional pole sitter, but the rest of the time's extremely tight.
This is Del Toro trying to catch up to Mayorga. He was around quite a bit last time, but he was in the GT3 cars, so that was a bit different for him. That was the slower class before. Now he's still in the slower class, but it's a different car. Jumping down to these GT4s. Looks like he's not quite as quick as Sam at this stage as he comes up onto the oval once again. Doesn't look like this is going to be a quick one from what I can tell on his timing and scoring. And he is going to jump down. Actually, it looks like abandoned the lap because he's now on the apron and getting out of the way of some of the faster GTE cars.
That's exactly what he was doing. Pick up Michael Johnson here in this purple Truffle Shuffle number 9 car, heading down to what is now named the Le Mans chicane. That was a pretty good change of direction right there at the beginning half of the corner. And you always set up the back half of the corner with the beginning half. I know that sounds pretty silly, but if you screw up the first couple apexes, there's no way in heck that you're going to put together the back half of the chicane out there. It all starts with that first turn in.
Yeah, it's always so tricky to get that one right, that is for sure. Johnson off by about 4/10 from that pole time and did not improve that time by. As we're checking out one of the newcomers in for this season, Heath Spencer joins in the number 8 machine. Very traditional livery here for a Porsche. That Gulf colors that you see is very popular with a lot of drivers in this series, and Heath brings it through the bus stop chicane nice and tidy and back up onto the banking through NASCAR 3 and 4. This looks like it will be quite a bit of an improvement, and we'll see if he can actually pull through here, as all he's got to do is hold flat to the start-finish line.
141.838 is his previous best. a 141.27, so that will vault him up into third place. My goodness, I had mentioned how close the times were, just picking up that half a second, vaulted him up 5 positions.
That was critical for him here, and we're into the final moments of this qualifying session. So yeah, hugely important for him. Hopping on board with Del Toro, really get a sense of how steep this banking is when you ride on board these cars. As he gets on the throttle, and it now starts to lean in, and multiple stories high is the other thing we should mention. That is how tall this banking is. Really doesn't give you a sense until you stand at the bottom of it in person.
No, it doesn't. The other thing that gives me a good sense, Joe, is over at the gift shop, I got myself a shot glass that leans at 31 degrees. That puts it into perspective.
So wait, I'm trying to picture this. The shot glass, it like rests at 31 degrees
Correct.
or something? Okay.
Correct. Yeah, so you've got a 31 degree banked shot glass, and yeah, that'll definitely put it into perspective for you too.
You can't get much fluid in there, I would imagine, honestly.
I'll take a picture of it and send it to you. So
okay,
you can see.
I got to see this because this is intriguing me now. Del Toro out to the line. Let's see if this is going to be any faster for him. He still has a long ways to go to get up to Mayorga, and no, he does not improve on his 53.3. So round he goes for at least 2 more laps. And as he comes back into the infield, we check in with Dylan Scott in the 08, who is coming through the kink down into that Western Horseshoe.
Something else that we should definitely mention is the time delta difference between the two classes. Now, I know that the RSR and the GT4 might kind of get a little bit congested, but I do think that it might work a little bit better than what we had last season. Remember, we had those prototypes, the GTP cars combined with the GT3s, and the speed differential was pretty drastic on those prototypes. Right now, the RSRs, the fastest time, our provisional poll is a 140.3. The GT4, a 152.5. And at Daytona, you're looking for about 8 to 10 seconds, and that's right about that gap you're looking at.
Yeah, that does sound like it should work out pretty well for them. So as Dylan Scott brings it through the Le Mans chicane, he is pulling a long bat steel, so he could give him a good tow. That was just Ian Ross that you saw kicking some smoke up at the bottom side of the track as he had a spin coming out of that chicane. This looks like it's going to be close on whether or not Dylan can improve. He only needs 0.07 of a second to go quicker than Spencer and take back that third spot. So let's see if this does it. No, 41.5 is just about 0.2 off in the end. Del Toro still trying his darndest. He's going to have one more go at it after this, as long as he can hold it together coming down into turn 1. And he might actually get another little pull of the slipstream if he can just get in behind Michael Johnson here. So we'll see if that has any sort of effect, but he does not go quicker once again. 53.7, last go for the number 27.
Yeah, like you said, about 35 seconds remaining here in qualifying. So this will be the last lap if you cross it right about now. Michael Johnson, a nice apex here in the first horseshoe. A little bit of a wiggle as he gets on the gas right there. It might cost him about 1/10 or so. Because remember, all we are is glorified drag racers out here. All we want to do is get on the gas as soon as possible. And that will make your top speed that much better going into that next break zone.
I see his psychological warfare has returned as he's put the blue flag on the nose of his car, letting the others know that he's coming along and he intends them to get out of the way. So as he gets up onto the banking, his lap showing right about at his best time, just as the checkered flag comes around. All he has to do is nail this last chicane.
See what he can put together here. Remember, you can completely throw away the lap right here with an incident point. You want to keep all 4 tires on that paved sticky stuff. Looks like he's able to do that and looks pretty clean through all of those apexes. And now it's just a matter of putting your foot to the floor. I will say at Daytona, you can pick up a lot of time by riding that yellow line. He's leaving a little bit on the table.
A bit surprising that he wouldn't try and stay a little bit closer down there, and he's going to abandon the lap. He doesn't think it's all that great anyway, so that's it for Johnson. The best he'll do is second, while Will Castillo in the pink pig livery, as they call it, another one that you see a lot here in Porsches on iRacing, comes around. Wow, he's showing almost a second improvement, which might actually get him into 12th place over Jeffrey Shulam. Let's see, 42.4 is going to be close. Oh, it is ahead by 1,000th of a second. He just snuck through in time ahead of Jeffrey Shulam at the very end. And that closes out our qualifying. We wait for that clock to hit 0 officially, since they do have the ability to wrap up the qualifying. It gives them some extra time to try and finish that up. The good news is, Joey, is that we've got representative times, it looks like, from everybody in the field.
We do, and 1,000th of a second separating 12th and 13th there. I'm also looking through the field. 700ths of a second separate 3rd and 4th in those RSRs. And then once again, less than 500ths of a second separates 5th and 6th out there. We have some extremely close lap times here in qualifying, and usually a packed field means good racing.
It does indeed. Well, and especially here where the slipstream is going to make it a lot easier to stay with the car ahead. So I'm anticipating a little bit of pack racing out there if the field is this close in qualifying on its own. But one thing we should mention that it could also affect is the fuel consumption. Now, that wasn't a problem in the regular races before, Joey, but they now have a pit stop because they have limited the fuel cells on these cars. So this is going to be something new for a lot of our drivers as we look at our starting grid. And BJ Fulton is going to be on the pole. Michael Johnson starts next to him. Heath Spencer will be in P3, with 4th going to Dylan Scott. Jad Duncan in 5th, followed by Mark Rondeau in P6. Then it's Matt Steele in 7th today. Row 4 goes to Doug Baccignone, with Michael Bolton in 9th. And then the end of row 5 sees Ian Roche.
Across the page is Dustin Heindel here in 11th. Will Castillo starting in 12th place, with Jeffrey Shulam rounding out the 13 of the RSR cars that are going to be taking place here today. And then we pole sitter in the GT4 class. That's going to be Sam Mayorga in that number 10 car. Federico Del Toro will line up next to him, sharing row number 1 in 2nd place. John Momeyer starting 3rd, Larry Haas 4th, and Christopher Marciniak in 5th place. That is the 5 GT4 cars we've got.
All right, so as they line up, getting ready to go, almost have everybody already out there, so we should be getting that pace lap shortly. But to my point that I was talking about, Joey, this track especially, quite the place to introduce the new pit strategy into the equation.
Yeah, definitely. I always say, I've been taught, don't beat yourself out there on the racetrack. Now, what I mean by that is when you typically go out there and practice for races, you think about going and doing lap times, right? You want to hit the apex in all of the crucial corners and put together that perfect lap. You don't often practice pit entry or even stopping in the pit stall. And that is crucial not to get a penalty, right? Don't speed down pit lane. If you speed down pit lane, all of your hard work that you've actually practiced for is thrown out the window. So don't beat yourself on pit lane.
Well, this is a real punch in the gut if you're BJ Fulton. His connection went out just as they were lining up for the grid. So Michael Johnson will inherit the pole and start at the front anyways, even though he couldn't manage to beat BJ on lap time. BJ looks like he's trying to reconnect and get out there, but he's going to be quite a ways behind. And obviously, even if he does catch the field, he's got a lot of cars to pass. As they get ready to be given control of the fields, pace car peels off, and Michael Johnson will wait for the call from the flag stand on his own up there. There it is. Green flag is out. He accelerates away and looks like he's trying to cover off that inside. Does not want Heath Spencer to try and send one up down into turn 1. Let's hope that we can get through this first corner nice and clean. It can often see a lot of issues, and it does look good for our GTEs as the GT4 is now heading as well.
It is Sam Mayorga, your pole sitter, that maintains the lead in that GT4 class. We got the picture-in-picture. We got troubles going into the first horseshoe. I think I see 3 cars turned around, and it was even before the break zone.
Really unfortunate. I think somebody may have bounced off the wall there, and that just sent them scattering. Took out a number of cars. Just trying to see who that was. I think Doug Boccignone maybe sitting at the side of the circuit. Looks like, Will Castillo got one spot at the end of qualifying, but seems to have gotten something like 5 of them by the time they get around to turn 4. And back up onto the banking, we follow along with Mark Rondeau chasing on Dylan Scott.
And this is where the draft games start to come into effect here. You see, just follow right in that slipstream, tuck yourself up underneath that rear wing, see if you can make a little bit of ground. And Rondeau actually backs out of the gas well before the break zone here. He's going to opt to follow Dylan Scott through the Le Mans chicane for the first time, but Michael Johnson has scampered off 2.5 seconds down the road already.
Yeah, and I think some of that was helped by the fact that I believe it was Heath Spencer that lost control of the car coming out of turn 2. So as he goes around the high side, Mark Rondeau is looking at second place rather than just trying to get onto the podium. And he's easily going to be able to slipstream past Dylan Scott. Wonder if they'll do a little leapfrog so that they can try to chase down Johnson.
Maybe we'll see it, because Dylan Scott kind of gave a big old lunge there on the outside of turn number 1. It's all brought in Jad Duncan. Good to see Matt Steele here in the 5th place position. Remember, he dominated that GT3 class that last season. This is a different car, a new challenge for him, and he's got lots of fast racers in front of him.
Does indeed. Matt Steele at the back of the group, just kind of watching and waiting now. How much do they want to fight? How much do they want to try and work together to ensure that Johnson does not manage to pull away from them and basically extend the gap here? Because once he's got that pace and has broken the draft, then it might be lights out. Heath Spencer, the curb to the inside. That sent him spinning and bounced off the Blue Armco. And Boccignone, very much an innocent victim. Same thing with Roche. Wow. Real shame at the start of a 40-minute race.
Big impacts, too, right? Huge impacts for a lot of those cars. Now, thankfully, here at POC, we do have those 2 fast repairs. Looks like Matt Steele is going to be trying to make a move on Jad Duncan here into the Le Mans chicane. He gets the car woed up a little loose right there in the middle, but nice car control of putting that right foot down, planting that back end of the Porsche, and accelerating out of that corner. And crucially, he did not lose the slipstream right in front of him. It is expanding just a touch, but it is within 1 second.
Exactly. That's what he needs here. Does look like Scott and Rondeau are doing a very good job up there, although looking around the outside, Dylan Scott, is he going to try and go side by side? Nope, he breaks that little bit early. Whoa, contact behind them, as I think that was Duncan and Heindel that maybe came together down into T1.
Dustin Heindel's doing a good job moving up through the field. He's got a lot of work still cut out for him here. Right in front is Jad Duncan in that black and yellow car. Jad's been doing a really good job just kind of maintaining his position right there in the 5th place. I've just been impressed. We've got 5 cars all only separated by, about 2 to 3 car lengths apiece right now.
Yeah, this is staying nice and tight. It's just unfortunate that our leader is the one that's really running away. Meanwhile, checking in with Marciniak. Not sure if he maybe had an issue. No, he's having a battle is what he's having. That's John Momeyer, fight for 4th just in front of him.
And these GT4 cars, you can easily tell the difference between them and the RSRs. They are, of course, the Cayman-based chassis versus the 911-based chassis. And, of course, they don't have those big old fender flares, the giant tires. However, they do have ABS. They do have traction control. They're just a little bit more roly-poly-oly as a driver trying to control them.
It's a good way of putting it. The other easy way to tell, of course, too, is the size of the rear wings. You can see these GTEs are very tall in comparison to them. Dylan Scott, is he our latest to have some connection issues there? He kind of disappeared on my screen. Looks like he's back now, thankfully. Not the way that we wanted to see this start for a couple drivers. By the way, BJ Fulton did get out there and Well, because of the big accident that happened, he's already up to ninth.
I wonder if Dylan Scott and Mark Rondeau do actually work together a little bit if they can reel in Michael Johnson. I think that Rondeau is probably right in the middle of the racetrack on a lot of these corner entries after getting on the brakes, and that's because he's got the pressure from Dylan Scott right behind him. I wonder if he maybe opened up the beginning half of the corner, if they can actually capitalize on a little bit more speed.
Yeah, that's a good point. And maybe that's something where they do need to communicate that they should work together a little bit better here. I'm not going to attack you. Let's go get after Michael Johnson. Or if you're Dylan Scott, you continue to let him hold you up and use that opportunity to save some fuel like we were talking about before.
No, that's an excellent point. You know, we usually don't talk about that fuel aspect, but it's not going to be a very long pit stop. So you're right. Even if you can save half second, 3/4 of a second, that can make that pit stop just that little bit shorter. And the easiest pass is a pass in pit lane.
Through the Le Mans chicane once again here as we watch Dustin Heindel at the back of this train going from second all the way to sixth, although he's just barely holding on. We can see his onboard here with his very cool setup that he's got on his sim rig. Very wide, cool looking screen for him. I believe, didn't we see in the past that he had a motion rig as well?
Yeah, I want to say he's rocking maybe like some triple 55s or something like that with a motion rig. I want to say he had a heart rate monitor at one point as well. It's quite an expansive setup over there, as it looks like. Oh, Matt Steele almost came into contact right there with Dylan Scott. Dylan had to take a little bit of avoiding action on the outside of the racetrack. He was out there in no man's land and now kind of squirms up those rear tires trying to put the throttle down, and you see his internet connection still kind of being a little bit intermittent. Chad Duncan's got his hands full.
It all looked like that started coming out of turn one when he was a bit wide, and it just snowballed from there, and it cost him, at least in terms of time. He only got passed by Matt Steele. He's kept Chad Duncan behind him, but he's had to play quite the rear guard at this stage. Almost a quarter of the way through the race now at this point, coming around onto the banking. He's going to hope that slipstream Chad Duncan will help him finally get by Dylan Scott, because he couldn't do it at the infield.
What I'm most curious about for the remaining, call it 32 minutes in this race as we ride on board number 83 here is can our pole sitter that dropped out during that pace lap recover maybe to a top 5 or so? His lap times have been extremely good. The last lap time was, call it a half a second faster than the 3rd, 4th, and 5th place cars, and the one before that was right on pace with our leader. So BJ Fulton might be in 9th place right now, but for how long?
I'm showing him as maybe about 8 seconds behind Dustin Heindel. So yeah, that's not that far back. He's 13.8 seconds off the lead right now. There he is in the silver-colored car, being chased by, I think that is Bacchignon, who is probably a lap down at this stage. Indeed, he is. So that's not for position. Yeah.
And that lap time, the reason why I pointed out a 141.7, the cars that we were watching just before, that group of Matt Steele and company, a 42.7. So BJ Fulton is picking up about a second a lap on everybody in front of him.
Whew, significant, that is for sure. That was a bit of a wide line for Doug there behind him. He keeps it from sliding into the wall, thankfully, down through the kink and flying into the Western Horseshoe. He has now officially caught up to Will Castillo in position number 8. So first on his list of cars he's trying to pass on track.
And I think I can see where some of the speed is coming from, Joe. I am always a fan of painted wheels, and especially wheels that match the livery. The red wheels looking awesome.
Yes, very snazzy looking. Let's see if it can deal with the classic pink pig in front of him. As they come onto the back stretch, he's going to start pulling him in. It's down to about 0.4 of a second and closing, just not quite close enough by the time they get to the braking here into the Le Mans chicane. But a good exit out of here could do the job.
Exactly. I think that's what he needs to focus on, and he's right in that slipstream directly behind Will Castillo right now. He's going to go the longer way around, which isn't always the easiest here at Daytona. Definitely the shortest distance along that yellow line is the faster way, but I think once we get down into the tri-oval here and into the break zone, Will probably let BJ Fulton by. He's hanging tough on the bottom. Let's see how deep he's going to take it on the brakes. It's actually going to be a braking duel. Let's see if BJ Fulton decides to try to do an over-under. It's not going to happen here in turn one.
As that's happening, you can see in the picture, Steele, Scott, Duncan having a little bit of a tussle for the last step on the podium. Still being led by the number 12, while Scott looks on, trying to make up for his mistake from a little bit earlier. Much more shallow line into that Western Horseshoe from Steele.
But crucially, got that pass done. BJ Fulton did there on Will Castillo, so he has got probably about 3.5 seconds, maybe 4 seconds up the road to try to go catch Michael Bolton. I'm still seeing on my timing and scoring, still having some internet issues with some of the cars out there, but that fight of Matt Steele, Dylan Scott, Jad Duncan still looks good.
Yeah, it's doing kind of what we expected, which was to stay close. Even if someone makes a mistake, all it does is shuffle up the order for a brief time as everybody manages to pull one another back in, although poor Dylan Scott still having his connection issues. In fact, it looked like he went off the racing line just to be sure in case something happened there with his blinking. But he's got a very good run now, and he is going to be able to maybe get by Matt Steele. This is a massive speed difference, but he's starting to slow down now that he's hitting the air, and they suddenly come to a halt. It's going to be a game of chicken on the brakes down into turn one. Scott almost managed to get by him, but that inside line was good at first. A cut back underneath. Look at that. Beautiful stuff from Dylan Scott to take the position.
Just too much rolling speed, and now Steele throws it down the inside of turn number 3. A little bit of a lockup, no contact made. We're going to see if Dylan Scott can capitalize on the exit. No, it's actually Matt Steele, and they are door to door heading down into this fast kink turn number 4. Matt Steele finally has to lift up out of the gas, so that pass that Dylan Scott started in turn 1 was completed in turn 4.
Remember last year how in the GT3R, Matt Steele was nigh unbeatable at times, and now he seems to be kind of mired in, just fighting for a podium. They'll hit the traffic. Maybe that'll give him some opportunities, but this is not the Matt Steele that we saw at the start of last season.
Well, not the Matt Steele that we saw pretty much throughout the entire season. Remember how many races he won in a row? What was that, like 6 or 7 races? And then only faltered probably 1 or 2 races throughout the entire season. But this is also what happens when you step up in class. Remember, he was in that, call it, slower class before, and we have got some traffic on our hands. Our first time through the GT4 cars was through the Le Mans chicane.
Yeah, not the place they wanted it. Larry Haas looking at a potential podium there in the orange and black that we just went by. But in fact, they're going to catch up to Larry Haas right here. This battle between Jad Duncan and Dustin Heindel. We're going to go 3 wide. I thought maybe he'd think about splitting them, but decided to go to the high side. Larry wants nothing to do with that. He stays out of the way as they cross the start-finish line. Jad Duncan will come out ahead of Dustin Heindel and into the top 5.
All about putting the power down here at Daytona and launching yourself off of those corners. Nice and tidy. I love watching these cars on the brakes. It seems like they really set the nose nicely. The GT3 cars, yeah, they do have ABS, but they don't have quite the performance window that these RSR cars have. It really is neat to see these back out on the racetrack.
They do look impressive, especially around the corners. Something has happened to Jeffrey Schulem, going a little bit too far wide, and thankfully keeps it out of the tires. A lot of cars wind up there when they go in too deep into turn 1, but just kind of slid sideways. He'll get going. He's running in 10th right now.
So back up with Dylan Scott, Mark Rondeau, Matt Steele, Jad Duncan just a second behind here, as well as Dustin Heindel. This is a good fight. And an update on BJ Fulton. I just thought I'd report that in. A 141.4 that last time by. The cars that we're watching here on screen, a 143.8. So he is still continuing to close the gap to this group.
Worth noting, he's even closing the gap to the leader. It was at 13.8. It's down to 12.6 to Michael Johnson. So he's still the fastest car on track. I just fear he won't have enough time to run him down. Meanwhile, Dylan Scott versus Mark Rondeau now. Dylan got by one. Can he get by two as he's going to take it wheel to wheel, coming down into turn one, but he's on the wrong side of the track unless he can pull that cutback move. I have a feeling Mark might be a little bit wise to that, and indeed, he keeps him from getting to the apex.
Dylan was just a little bit wide there in turn number one, kind of out in the marbles. Lost all that grip in the middle of the corner, and yeah, Rondeau was able to kind of accelerate away from him. But crucially, right, that little bit of side-by-side has brought in this driver right here, Matt Steele. Now, I had talked about how he dominated that GT3 class, and now he's stepped up to the fast class. He's definitely got a lot of fast drivers that he's going to have to go and pass, and I think that this is his first challenge of the season.
Indeed. And I mean, this will give us a taste of if it's going to be more of that domination, if he can make his way up to the front, or if he's going to just be fighting for these podium positions throughout the season. Who knows? He could maybe kind of pick things up as it goes along as we ride on board. Watch the bottom right there. 145, 150 miles an hour. They're not even out of NASCAR 2 and onto the backstretch where it's really going to start to take off. 175 miles an hour. These things get very, very fast. 180 before finally slowing back down.
I'm happy that you brought that up because I was noticing the top speed on these RSR machines. Now, typically those GT3s about 170 miles an hour, but yeah, here at Daytona with these fast RSRs, we're getting another 10 miles an hour. We'll see if we get north of 180 here on the front straightaway, using a little bit of the draft from that GT4 car in front. There's 180 before we even hit the tri-oval, side by side almost between Scott and Rondeau. Matt Steele's got the perfect seat.
184 is where he maxed out. That is eye-wateringly fast. And coming out of the oval portion, we're back to the infield now, continuing to try and play catch-up on this group, on this duo, fighting for second spot. Steele knows he's got to be just a little bit tighter to the rear bumper if he wants to pick up any pieces when they start battling.
Go through this fast turn number 4. Thankfully, once the tires are warmed up, that's really a non-issue, just easy flat through there. And Rondeau, once again, choosing more of the inside, kind of the middle of the road there in turn number 5, and then come up to, I think, the most important corner on this entire track, turn number 6. You have to get the throttle down earlier than anybody else because you accelerate up onto the banking and then leave that foot flat to the floor all the way down the back straightaway.
Yeah, important and deceptive, too. It always seems to catch me out. I feel like I never quite get it as good as it needs to be. Haas is actually trying to hold on to this third place now as John Momeyer is getting very close to him back there. We haven't had a whole lot of battles here in the GT4s, but it looks like we might have a change for a podium position if John can just keep this up.
Just a report on that GT4 class. It's been managed by Sam Mayorga up front. I think he's got, call it, about 15 seconds or so to Federico Del Toro, who's sitting in the second spot. And so Sam Mayorga definitely showing him how to drive one of those cars.
All right. Same song, different verse, but it rhymes as Dylan Scott still struggling to get through, though he did find an opening on the exit. Another cutback technique from the 08 works beautifully. He is going to get into P2. Now that he's got there, though, can he hold on to it or can he run away?
It's 4 seconds. Remember, it was about 2.2, maybe 2.5 seconds well earlier in this race. So Michael Johnson in that purple number 9 is doing what he needs to do, right? Run away as fast as you can, as quick as you can, and then let everybody else try to come up and catch up to you. And that is the job that Dylan Scott is going to look out the windshield and try to hunt down Michael Johnson now.
So I was checking those times since you were mentioning them earlier. Fulton about a second behind the next car, and he's a second a lap faster. So he's pretty much catching this group as it looks like Haas has been passed by Momeyer down into turn 1. So just was trying to hold on as best he could, but round the outside, nice move from the Sun Devils car.
I was just noticing that myself, Joe. That is a an ASU-themed Porsche Cayman GT4 out there, driven by John Momeyer, looking pretty good in the Daytona sun.
If I'm not mistaken, that's traditionally the colors he runs. I have to remember. I can't recall if it was his alma mater or what exactly it was, but he almost always has the forks on his car. As looks like Dylan Scott is going to have to give it right back to Mark Rondeau, who overtakes him slipstreaming around the outside and denies him the apex that time. He knew it was coming and won't let him do it again. Matt Steele catching up because of the side-by-side action, so it was short-lived for the 08s.
Not only Matt Steele, but look, there's Jad Duncan, that yellow and black number 83. He has done a great job to just kind of hang on to the back end of this draft train, and the more that Rondeau and Dylan Scott kind of argue about that second spot, just the more draws in Matt Steele as well as Jad Duncan. I can report that BJ Fulton made the pass for 7th place on Michael Bolton that last lap time, so he has now only got one more car separating himself in this battle that we're watching.
And is still down on time to the leader, 10.5 seconds now. I'm not sure what it started as, but he's made up, I'd say, about 3 seconds in about 10 minutes. So that's probably not going to be enough unless he really gets a good run, or maybe is able to do something in the pit stops. Ooh, big defensive move from Rondeau. Scott doesn't take the bait and doesn't try to pass him. Maybe he's setting him up for the exit here, because that was a shallow entry from the 171. And indeed, he's right on him now.
I believe that the slipstream is a little bit more powerful here with these RSR cars than the GT3s that we typically watch here at Daytona, and that's just because they've got more aerodynamics, right? They've got more downforce. They punch a bigger hole, and check this out. Mark Rondeau hitting pit lane for the first time. Michael Johnson also led the field in.
Okay. So this is just past halfway, and we weren't entirely sure on what the fuel window was going to look like with these new limited fuel cells, but this does give us an idea. Scott, Duncan, Heindel all carry on, so this is not the very end of it, but we do know that Michael was one of those that's been punching the air on his own for much of the race.
What I'm really curious about with these pit stops, though, is how long are they going to be stationary in terms of that fuel fill? I see that Michael Johnson, 16.2 seconds. Mark Rondeau behind him, 14 seconds. Matt Steele, 13.8 seconds. So I wonder if Michael Johnson actually maybe overfilled it, and that gap was 4 seconds, is now going to be less.
Well, we'll find out soon enough. Maybe he's just playing it safe, trying not to run out of fuel. Is behind him. Think there was contact. Heath Spencer got into the side of Sam Mayorga, who is our leader in the GT4s. Let's hope he doesn't have damage.
That's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, Heath Spencer, probably not the Daytona that he wants to remember after lap number 1, having that big old wreck there in turn number 2, and then getting into the side of the other class leader. Just sometimes you got to focus forward. This is the replay. You see Heath dive down to the inside, lock it up, can't get the car stopped, and really, Sam just had nowhere to go. He can't just drive off the racetrack himself.
Yeah, he turned in pretty late. He was expecting that car to find his way down to the apex, and it wasn't the case. By the way, Momeyer, Haas, and Marciniak all in pit lane from the GT4 class. Mayorga and Del Toro carry on. This is lapping the car of Heath, so that was not for position that we saw Rondeau going by there. Remember, Rondeau's already completed his pit stop, about 3.2 seconds back. So yeah, he did make up a little bit of a second, part of a second on Michael Johnson in those pit stops.
Definitely, and it just came down to the fuel fill time. Like I said, Michael Johnson, because we've got it right here on our time and scoring, 16.2 seconds is how long he was stationary for. Mark Rondeau, only 14.3 seconds. Matt Steele, 13.8 seconds. Oh, no. Was that Dylan Scott? It was Dylan Scott. Oh, no.
What I'm confused about is they have he's trying to back down pit exit right now because he's stuck facing the wrong way. But the pit limiter is supposed to stay on for quite a while, all completely around that corner. And I'm not sure how his car slid into the wall, unless he had taken it off early, which I don't see.
I can tell you how, Joe. So
Okay.
sometimes the pit lane speed limiter is actually too fast for the pit lane exit turn. And
Really? Oh.
yes, and so what happened is Dylan Scott simply understeered into the outside wall, bounced him back across the track, aka spinning on pit exit.
I would have thought that it'd been slow enough that it wouldn't be as much of an issue, but apparently not. And embarrassing way for Dylan Scott to discover that fact, too, as we check out Dustin Heindel. Now right on the back of Jad Duncan. They inherit a spot from the spinning Dylan Scott here, and one more for Dustin Heindel puts him up into the top 5.
Nice move there from Dustin. A little bit of oversteer on the brakes, getting into the Le Mans chicane, but collected up very nicely, and off he goes down the road. Now, this is Dylan Scott trying to pass Will Castillo. Remember, we were just talking about Dylan making that little bit of a mistake on pit lane exit. Will nice and deep on the brakes, but Dylan's been so efficient at doing those over-unders, usually in turn number 1. This time through that Le Mans chicane. I can say that he's got some right rear damage on that car. I wonder how much it's going to affect that top speed.
Yeah, it's definitely going to make life pretty difficult for him. And I'm trying to see, did BJ Fulton have another disconnect? Because he's grayed out on my time in scoring. There's the replay for Jad Duncan exiting pit lane. Oh,
I was going to say, I think that Jad had a mistake to drop him so far back. He had been so good, hadn't made a mistake all race long, but definitely got off into the grass there going to turn 3.
Yeah, the one driver that's loving all of this is Dustin Heindel, because, he's essentially inherited 2 positions relatively easily, and it's not easy for Dylan Scott, who cannot seem to get the car to grip coming off the International Horseshoe. Will Castillo, completely different car with the same livery that he's now fighting against.
Jump on the brakes here for what is the Western Horseshoe. Castillo drifts out just a little wide there. You can kind of get away with a couple different lines there in turn number 5 because it's only a short shoot straightaway right here to turn number 6. And this is, like I said, the most important corner at Daytona. It launches you out onto this very long straightaway. And Dylan Scott trying to get down to the inside. If he can make this pass done.
Well, he's trying. He's got the speed. He's got the inside. Question is, can he complete it as they almost come together down the back straight as that was happening in the picture-in-picture? Bolton and Heindel had just the slightest bit of contact, nose to tail, coming into the Le Mans chicane. That has been an interesting fight as well, and it looks like maybe Scott has finally got this one done. If we head back here, Michael Bolton trying to break deep, looking around the outside, but Heindel covers him.
And got to be careful of that other black and yellow car. I've been mentioning Jad Duncan's name quite a bit. I do feel like he's probably got just a touch more pace than both Michael Bolton and Dustin Heindel, which are the 2 cars directly in front of him. We'll see if this black and yellow number 83 can maybe close this gap a little bit, maybe balance on the brakes just this little bit better. You got to really jump on the brakes right here. Roll the speed through turn number 5. Little bit wide on the front end right there, and there's the damage on the left rear from that replay that we saw just a couple laps ago.
And did you see, was that Dylan Scott or Will? I think maybe it was Will Castillo. In their picture-in-picture, one of the cars had an absolute 4-wheel drift coming into the International Horseshoe, saved it, but certainly lost quite a bit of time. Right now we're watching Duncan here. This is Bolton in front of him. 2 very similarly painted cars with the sort of yellow and black scheme on them, with Dustin Heindel and the white, red, and black just in front of them. Let's see. It was Castillo. Oh, Dustin Heindel is extremely lucky. Dylan Scott was extremely lucky in that situation.
A little bit of a sim racer car control move right there where he was so spun out, all he did was lock the thing down and thankfully got it stopped. And look at this. Is this 4 cars all lined up here between Heindel, Bolton, Jad Duncan? It's a good fight that we've got on our hands with, call it 10 minutes remaining.
Indeed. and up ahead of them. We don't need to go there, but Rondeau's still in second, but he hasn't been able to reel in Michael Johnson since the pit stops. They're still about the same distance apart up there. And trying to see. Yeah, BJ Fulton, by the way, did lose connection once again. Heath Spencer lost control again, this time spinning around inside of turn 6. But to be fair to him, a lot of drivers have done that, and I can't count how many times I've spun out on the inside of that corner.
Car seems to be a little bit loose for Heath Spencer here today, but I'm sure that all you got to do is take it as a learning opportunity. A lot of these drivers, they can get frustrated out there, but every single lap, every single corner is a learning opportunity for next time that you go around. Sometimes, yeah, you do have to turn a race into a practice session.
And, you know, the positive to take from this is that we saw Heath Spencer is fast. Remember, he was supposed to start up towards the front, and just it was unfortunate at the start of the race that he kind of lost control at a bad place with everybody around. Otherwise, does look like he is quick, just needs that consistency to seal the deal. Michael Bolton is one of those drivers that has been extremely consistent as well. He's kind of touted that, used that to his advantage in the past. Only good enough for a top 5 right now as it sits, but definitely a 4th place possible if he can keep up with Dustin Heindel here.
So as I kind of look back on the 30 minutes that we've had so far, I've been impressed with this driver that we've got our camera on right here, Michael Johnson. He's kind of managed the gap from out front. It had ballooned up to past 4 seconds at one point, and then maybe a little bit of a longer fuel fill shrunk that gap back down. And then Rondeau, we didn't catch it, but he had actually closed it down to about 2.2, 2.5 seconds. And then ever since that, Michael Johnson has just put the visor down, focused forward, and ballooned that gap back up to 3.5 seconds to the good.
Fittingly, that blue flag on the front has actually had to have been a blue flag for cars that he was lapping, because there's been nobody in front of him for position in this race. And that wasn't how it was supposed to be, because he was supposed to start alongside BJ Fulton, who is currently running 12th and a lap down from the leader. Was on the lead lap before his connection gave out on him once again. Meanwhile, Sam Mayorga, we wondered if he had any sort of damage. I'm going to say that's a no, considering he's got 32 seconds over Federico Del Toro.
Impressive. And I love the data, right? Sam's fastest lap. I mean, he is so consistent. His fastest lap of 52.5, his last lap of 52.6 out there. So he is doing incredibly consistent laps. Federico Del Toro, our car in second place, his fastest lap of 54.0. So nearly 2 seconds off of our leader. And Sam, that last lap was actually his fastest. He just improved it even more, of 52.3 now.
Sam is looking like he's going to be the one to beat. Can Michael Bolton beat Dustin Heindel down into turn 1? He's going to have the inside coming down into it, but Heindel's going to break deep coming into the corner and try and swing the wide way around. There's not much grip usually there, but he hangs tough. Oh, but he finally has to give way as they go through the chicane out of turn 1. And it, in fact, has to defend a bit, because Jad Duncan's getting a little dangerously close back there.
Yeah, but the only thing that I'm a little curious about is Dustin Heindel actually went down onto the apron to make that pass. So I wonder what their rules are over here. And it was Michael Bolton, I believe, that was just kind of right along that yellow line. So got to be careful here at Daytona, depending on what your rule set is.
Yeah, I'm not sure what specifically. I know in general, iRacing allows you to get below that yellow line on the road course to try and make the pass. But yeah, I'm not sure if they have anything in particular to be concerned with. And man, Michael Bolton is gone, as Dustin Heindel is more concerned about Jad Duncan behind him now.
Definitely. Let's see if Jad can close it in maybe a little bit more. I think where you really want to make the passes, coming out of the Le Mans chicane, kind of give up the beginning half of this corner, focus on standing on the throttle. But I gotta say, an excellent corner from Dustin Heindel in the number 5, actually left Jad Duncan in the dust.
Great work from Dustin. It's exactly what he needed to do in that situation, especially this close to the end. He needs that separation so that he doesn't get sniped at the line. Maybe if he could get up to Michael Bolton, instead he could be the one to try and make that pass. As 5 minutes left to go, maybe about 3 or 4 laps left here.
I think so, and I'm wondering if there's maybe a problem with Matt Steele. His last couple lap times have not been up to snuff, and Michael Bolton, now that he's got that clean air, has just hunted him down like it's been nothing. What was 1.5 seconds, now down to 0.6 in closing.
I'm checking out the lap times, and I'm not sure what's going on, honestly. But yeah, the proof is in the pudding, and Michael Bolton is there with the possibility of getting on the podium, denying Matt Steele from starting off with the champagne for this latest season. The start of 2025, they do 2 seasons per year here in the POC. So this is not the way that the 6 months of racing, I think Matt Steele wanted to try and kick things off. Not close enough this time for Michael Bolton. He's about half a second back, but if he gets a good launch off of the Le Mans chicane, he could definitely catch him by the time they get to the start-finish line.
If I'm calling a team manager or a spotter for Matt Steele right now, and we see these GT4 cars, they shouldn't be an issue. They should be all cleared out of the chicane by the time these RSRs get through here. But I would give Matt Steele some information, right? You got 3.5 minutes left. Call it 3 minutes by the time you get to the line. You need to focus forward. You've done a tremendous job. You've gained 4 positions so far. Stay on the podium right here. You see a car coming up in your mirror. Focus forward. Keep that 3rd place position if you want the momentum to start the year.
So here's what's interesting. We have 3 laps left, and it was about 7 seconds shy there when Michael Johnson crossed the start-finish line of what should have been 2 laps left to go instead. So is his call of the 16 seconds worth of fuel the better one here? Did everybody else get it wrong, or was he really just playing it that safe? Meanwhile, whoa, that was way too wide for Bolton, and he pays the price for it. Dustin Heindel catches back up.
See, can Dustin make an aggressive move going here into 5? You see Bolton just shut the door there on entry, not even leave it open, not even cracked open there for the cars behind. And outside of turn number 3, that first horseshoe, all that happened was Bolton was a little bit wide, and if you get too wide on the exit out there, it actually kind of falls off the little bit of the banking. It kind of flattens out, and that's exactly where Bolton had that huge loose moment. Thankfully, he caught the car.
That was a huge boon for Matt Steele. The distance now is back up to 0.8 of a second. He can just hold station there. He could have that 3rd place in the end, but he's got to make sure that Bolton doesn't make that time back up in the next lap or 2. As they come out of the bus stop, he's cut it down to 0.8 of a second already. But now, remember, like I said, he's got Dustin Heindel back behind him, and something's happened with Will Castillo spinning coming down into turn 1. Thankfully, does not hit anything. And yes, I can now say 2 laps to go for Michael Johnson.
Yeah, I saw that as well. He crossed the line with, call it, about 5 seconds to spare or so. So 2 laps for all of these drivers. Remember, the white flag only comes out in relationship to our leader out here. So all of these drivers, start planning your move for that final lap.
That's what looks like Jad Duncan's trying to do, as he's poking his nose left and right, catching up to Dustin Heindel. Again, Heindel more worried about what's in front of him as it gets so close to the rear bumper of Michael Bolton for a brief moment, coming around through the kink once more and down to the braking of the Western Horseshoe. Again, very different lines for all 4 drivers, each of them kind of going their own way, and for Dustin Heindel, that was not the best way.
No, and it's going to compromise his entry right here. You see him kind of in the middle of the road again. Let's see if he does an excellent job. Remember earlier when he went into that Le Mans chicane, I thought that Jad Duncan was giving up the first half of the corner to really close it in on the back half, but Dustin Heindel is just doing an excellent job hitting his marks and getting on the gas when he needs to.
It's all about doing the right thing at the right time to try and defend, keep the drivers from having the opportunities that they want to sneak by, cutting across the chicane and back up onto the banking. Clock ticking down, 10 seconds to go. I can report that Johnson's approaching the line now, and 3 seconds to spare in the end for Michael Johnson. White flag is out. Last lap, he's got a gap of 5 seconds over Rondeau.
See if Chad Duncan can finally make this move here into turn number 1. He dives down to the inside, but even later on the brakes goes Dustin Heindel. So maybe a little bit of a feint move from Chad Duncan trying to sucker Dustin Heindel in, but he was not taking the bait.
And Matt Steele and Michael Bolton as well. And quite the fight up there. Oh, that was way deep into the corner from the 12 car. That could have been costly, but thankfully he got a decent exit off the turn. Now they come up to traffic, though, Joey. This could make a big difference.
Let's see. Matt sneaks down to the inside here in turn number 5. Bolton does as well. I think that almost all the RSR cars are going to make it through. Heindel made a self-mistake right there, and that allows Chad Duncan down to the inside, which he'll now pass that GT4 car.
Just a little bit distracted, it looked like, by Marciniak. And unfortunately, it has cost him a position on the last lap. He could still try and sneak back by him, but it's going to be tricky. He's going to have to really time it just right. Same thing with Bolton and Steele here. What does Michael have? Oh, is he going to try it here instead of coming off the corner? He's going to force him to go shallow as he's setting him up for the exit.
I think that would be a smart move, and look at the exit that he already got. He is going to pass Matt Steele probably before we're even out of turn number 4, but Michael Johnson's going to collect a checkered flag.
First race of the season, first win from Michael Johnson here at Daytona to kick things off. Meanwhile, at the top of your screen, Bolton has managed to get by Steele. He's ahead of him. He's coming the long way, but it should be enough. And indeed, he will get it at the line by 0.03 of a second. What a move from the 127 right at the last chance.
Need to brush up on those side drafting skills is what Matt Steele needs to do. But this is Sam Mayorga. Now, I know we didn't cover the GT4 class a ton, but Sam has just been on fire. I see 42 seconds ahead of Federico Del Toro in second place. Not only your pole sitter, your fastest lap in the class, and also your race winner in the number 10.
There's that domination that we were talking about. Different class, different driver, but impressive stuff. Will be, it looks like, the same lap, at least for Federico Del Toro. Did not get split by the GTE leader, at least in this case. But as he comes around, he knows he's got some work to do. At least he will collect a podium today, as he will be perhaps, I think, the last driver to get to the line here.
Celebrate with some victory donuts from some of our winners as Federico finally gets through the tri-oval here. He will be our last car to cross the line. I think that this is a good stepping stone for Del Toro out here. Remember, he joined us last season in those GT3 cars, and every single interview, it was all a learning experience.
Exactly. So there'll be stuff for him to pick up on, and everybody's going to be trading notes, no doubt, come after the race. Speaking of after the race, let's take a look at what the results were as Michael Johnson takes the victory over Mark Rondeau. And then how about Michael Bolton from 9th to 3rd today? What a run. Matt Steele from 7th to 4th, still impressive on his part too. Dustin Heindel 11th to 5th. I believe that's the hard charger, that one. Chad Duncan went from 5th to 6th, and you've got Dylan Scott finishing P7 and Will Castillo finishing 8th. Jeff Shulam will be the last one on the lead lap in 9th. Ian Roche will round out your top 10 a lap down. Joey?
Over in 11th, we've got Doug Boccioni here. BJ Fulton finishing in 12th. Remember, BJ had a lot of internet connection issues, and then Heath Spencer with those few spins out there will finish 13th in that RSR chassis. And then comes that GT4 category we had mentioned. The number 10 car, Sam Mayorga, really just dominating today's event. Federico Del Toro finishing in second place with Larry Haas rounding out that podium. John Momeyer and Christopher Marciniak had a great race all race long. And then I think it was Momeyer that finally kind of passed Christopher back there. Those were the 5 cars that competed in GT4.
Looks like we've got our winner ready to talk to us. Michael Johnson comes to join us in the booth. So Let's have a chat with our winner for race number one. Michael, congratulations. But I don't know about you, but we were a bit surprised that you didn't have anybody to join you at the start there.
I was a bit surprised too, as was PJ. Just like last race with Dylan, computer issues. So it's our version of a flat tire, of a broken transmission, of a blown engine. He was able to get back in the race and did a brilliant job to come back through, and then had more issues, and then I got a little sigh of relief there, and it was able to kind of manage that gap back to Rondeau.
So the other thing that struck us in this race is when we had the pit stops, which is a bit of a newer-ish thing for this series on a sprint race. You had about a second and some change longer than anybody else in your pit stall. What was the reasoning for that? Were you playing it safe, or was that just iRacing randomness?
I didn't trust my calculation. I'm using a new spotting app that does that, does the calculation for me, and I haven't done enough races with it. And it filled only 9.4 gallons or something, which turns out was more than enough because I had 2.8 at the end, and our max was 11.6, I think 11.8. So I had more than enough fuel, but I also had that really big gap and knew that I could open it up. So I just filled it to the maximum we were allowed. We were limited to 45%, so I filled it the full 45% and went on with it.
So that does explain it then. All right, well, you set a high bar to start things off. Do you think you can repeat this at Watkins Glen next time out?
I love Watkins Glen. It's an amazing track. It's a lot of fun. But I got to tell you, BJ has some kind of magic touch that is working for him. So that's a little bit of a question mark for me. I think I might race better, but he's just a little bit faster. So it's going to be kind of a flip of the coin to see which one of us can do it. It's also a very heavy draft track, so we'll see how the draft works for us there, and if it works to the advantage of one or the other.
Again, congratulations, Michael. It was a clinical drive today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Hi to all the fans, and fantastic race. Join us in 2 weeks. I hope you see just as good a race.
Michael W. Johnson, your winner here today at Daytona in the GTE class. Your winner in the GT4s was Sam Mayorga. Sent everybody running home with their tails between their legs. He's with Joey.
Yeah, Sam, first of all, congrats on dominating at Daytona here today.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yeah, I'm glad that I'm racing with POC again, and it was a good race.
Now, pole position, fastest lap, and a margin of victory by 42 seconds. Are you going to be able to keep that up all season?
I mean, I sure hope so. The last time I raced with POC must have been in 2022, and I've spent a lot of time in the GT4, in the public series, like the Falcon Sports Car Challenge and the GT4 Fixed. So, I'm hoping that I can take that experience with me and keep dominating.
Well, let's talk a little bit just kind of about the tracks in the GT4, since you seem pretty comfortable in the car. Do you have maybe certain styles of racetracks that maybe suit you a little bit better?
Well, I think Daytona was a really good start to the season. We won the 24 last year in the second split in the GTD class with Scuderia Chicken House, and considering that I've been spending so much time in this car, it's just I guess so second nature at this point that getting this track and this car was a recipe for destruction.
It seems like you found a chassis that works together with you. Congrats on the win here, and we look forward to seeing you the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to it as well.
That was Sam Mayorga driving that Cayman number 10 car, dominating the class today.
And then finishing behind Johnson in the GTEs, it was Mark Rondeau finishing P2. But Mark, we saw a little bit of battling after the first lap incident that looked like it spread the leader away from the rest of the field. Were you a bit annoyed that you guys weren't able to keep up with him? Do you think if you had kept that slipstream that it would have been a fight, or did Michael seem to have this covered?
I think Michael had pace. I'd like to believe I could have made it a battle, but probably not. I was happy to be where I was and had some fun battles with Dylan and Matt Steele chasing me down and trying to get through traffic. That was a fun race.
It looked like a lot of fun. It's been a while since we've seen this combination of the RSR and the GT4 came in the POC. I would wager a guess that you're happy to see it return with a performance like this. It's different. I've got a few more years of experience, and I like to think I'm a little better driver in the RSR now, and it's fun. We're all really close. I think 3rd through 8th or 9th were, a couple of tenths here and there apart in qualifying. It was amazing. Yeah, we were wowed by that as well. We noticed this tiny gaps. Clearly, you guys will have some battles on your hand throughout the season if it stays like that. Is there anybody you'd like to thank before you head out here?
GSRC, you guys do a great job. POC for putting this on. My girlfriend Alicia, my son Leiden, and my parents who watch this. They'll watch this tomorrow like they always do.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was Mark Rondeau finishing 2nd here in the GTE class. I do believe Joey's also got P2 in the GT4s, Federico Del Toro.
Yeah, Federico Del Toro starting off the season with a podium in a different car. How do you like the GT4s?
It's a fun car. It's really a fun car. It's pretty hard to drive because you got to gauge the grip. It's not like the GT3 that has all the grip or the RSR.
Well, now that you've got a race under your belt, what are you as a driver going to focus on to start to close that gap up to Sam?
I gotta get better. Sam took us all to school basically, but it'll get better. It's the first time, and little by little we'll get to it.
Well, I loved watching you last season progress up through the GT3 stuff, get up onto the podium, and make those improvements every week. So I look forward to watching your performance this season in the GT4. Thanks for coming out and racing with us. Anybody you want to give a shout out to, Federico?
No, all of you guys, you're doing a great job. I'm having a lot of fun, and it's basically, like you said, get better and learn.
I look forward to watching you all season long. And Joe Peak, that was Federico Del Toro driving the gray and red number 27 GT4 car today.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you. That was P2 over in GT4s, but P3 in the GTEs saw quite a finish. Michael Bolton joining us. Michael, has your heart calmed down yet? Because that looked like a thriller.
You know me too well, man. Good to hear your voices. I have to give a quick shout out to my amazing wife, Gabby, and my awesome pit crew, aka my dad, who just built me a brand new computer to support this triple screen setup that I have. So couldn't have done it without my support team. So just had to say that.
Well, they did a good job getting you ready, and you rewarded them with a podium finish today, up 6 positions. Now, there was obviously the incident at the start, but it looks like you capitalized pretty well on the nature of this track and in the slipstreaming.
Yeah, this car is amazing at slipstreaming, obviously, and the drafts are incredible. But lap 1 was pretty chaotic. I almost got taken out a couple times, and then just tried to get into the rhythm. And I'm kind of like Johnson the last couple seasons, where not the best at qualifying and try to make some time up in the race, but great result for the first race of this season, so couldn't be any happier.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely sets a good sign for what could be to come here. And I mean, speaking of which, you do have something similar coming up next time out. Watkins Glen is another very fast track with a lot of slipstreaming. So do you anticipate it'll be similar?
Obviously that would be the goal, and I hope for that. Johnson and I are going to be definitely doing some coaching this season again for going back a couple years into the RSR. But yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys more and having a great season. But got to give a shout out to the POC for just putting this all together. These guys are awesome, and the racing is so close. It's quite the enjoyable thing to look forward to every couple of weeks. So
All right. Well, again, thank you for coming and chatting with us, and congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
All right, that was P3 in the GTE's Michael Bolton. That's going to wrap us up. So we want to give a big thank you to the series as well for bringing us back for another season of coverage, and to our sponsors, Porsche, there is no substitute, and Top Gun MG. They're at topgunmg.com if you want to check them out. Thanks to the team today, Joey, Christian, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, our website, and our merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment on GSRC. So next time out, we're going to Watkins Glen, as we mentioned. That's going to be January 27th at 10 p.m. Eastern. So should be another good one, as that is another classic of North American racing. And, of course, we have our other various series, including next up, it's going to be Saturday. We start off with the Saxon Ring for the Grand Prix Legends before we head off to IMSA Vintage. However, in the meantime, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.